Hello, fellow makers. I am about to embark on a crafting exercise I've never quite done something like before, but just in case anybody out there ever wants to make a Weber head, as my son is going to be Weber from Don't Starve Together. It's a video game that he loves. And Weber is a spider that swallowed a boy who didn't die and kind of became the spider. So he's basically going to wear a long sleeve black shirt and black pants and a spider head on top. So it's going to be basically a ball shape made out of foam with fur. And I've got these kids' floor mats, these interlocking floor mats I've just cleaned off after many uses of foot protection. And I've got this excellent black fur from Joann's. By the way, fur is really expensive. So if you can find it on sale, I highly recommend that. Now I'm going to go online and make my pattern. So now what I'm going to do is create a template from this website online where you can make your own sphere template at templatemaker.nl/sphere. You can see here that I've entered 13 because that's the diameter of the circle I want to make. My son's shoulders are 13.5 inches wide, so I figured 13 ought to cover it. This is going to be the outside of the foam, so I don't have to worry about what the inside circumference is, or the inside diameter is going to be like. I want it to be 8 segments because it seems like 8 makes a pretty good round shape. I think if I went smaller than 8, it would start to look a little more like a polygon than a sphere. And I went with 12 rings. I experimented with this a little bit. So 12 is where it started to look like more of a smooth boat shape, which is what I wanted to go for. I don't need a margin. I don't need glue because the thickness of the foam is going to create the free edge that I glue these pieces together. I chose PDF because I know how to print a PDF really well. And then I clicked preview and I clicked create, and then I got this file over here, which is this nice boat shape here. So these are what the rings are. These are these segments here. So 12 worked pretty well in getting me a nice smooth boat shape. And then I'm going to print this out and tile it together so that I've got one that is to scale, because this right now is, if I click into this screen, this is 5 inches wide and about 20.5 inches long. So I'll definitely have to tile that together. And then I'll have my shape that I'll be cutting the foam out of. Just in case you didn't know how to tile things, I thought I'd go through the settings in Acrobat Reader for tiling stuff. What you want to do is use the poster option. In your printer settings, you want to click on this button here and then set your overlap to probably at least half an inch. So that's the piece of paper that you have underneath the paper so you can tape the other one to it. I'll show you as I'm assembling things. And then you can go ahead and print that. So if you haven't tiled before, I just wanted to give you another tip on how to do this. You've printed a 1/2 inch overlap so that when your printer isn't going to print all the way to the edge of your paper. It's going to have a little white margin that's probably anywhere between like 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch, depending on your printer and its settings and stuff like that. Because the little wheels that pull the paper through have to have somewhere to go. So you want to have at least that amount as your overlap, plus a little bit more, so that when you're cutting it, you'll have a little bit to cut off to make sure you go right to the edge of the artwork. So this is what it looks like. See that the art goes past the cutting edge here? So I'm going to pull this down. And then when I put the 2 pieces of paper together, the overlap will be enough so that I can line it up just like that and tape it, and it'll be like one giant piece of art, like so. So now what I'm doing is I'm taking that pattern that we created and I'm making cuts into the foam on that pattern to create these boat shapes. So what I'm doing is I've taped together my pattern and I'm going to trace around it on this floor mat and make 8 slices, and then I'm going to glue it together with barge contact cement. Alright, so as you can see here, I've put all my boat shapes together I've glued them together with barge contact cement to make this sort of ball shape. I think these points here are because of variations in how I cut the tips, so some of them might have been a little too wide. But overall, I think it's going to be fine because the spider head has a little bit of like an egg roundness on the top. And part of this is going to be cut away to make room for my son's head. So his head is about 12 inches at the widest point. So I'm going to make a circle that's roughly 12 inches in diameter. Good evening. Well, it's evening right now because it's getting close to Halloween, so it's starting to get pretty dark outside. So I finished the head, and I started drawing a mouth on it, a mouth that's pretty big because that's how my son is going to be looking out when he's in his mask. I've made the circle in the bottom that fits on top of his head. And I removed some of the peak on the top because I wanted to round it out and not make it quite so egg-shaped. And then I took that boat shape that I created the wedges of this ball with, and I traced that into the fur and started sewing those segments together. As I put this on top of the ball, I noticed that it doesn't quite go around the ball. So you may also find that you may need to kind of adjust your pattern as you go. I'm going to need to cut out one more boat shape and sew it onto my sack looking thing right now. And then I should have about enough. Also, don't forget to keep your fur all going the same direction. It's really easy to forget as you're trying to be economical with putting your pieces together and cram as much piece on the fabric as possible. Don't forget you want all your hair going the same direction. Okay, so I finished sewing my sack shape and pulled it onto the head. I had just a little extra material, so I pulled it all together and then folded back the stuff that was extra, drew a chalk line, cut that off with tiny scissors, and then sewed it up. And now the fur is so long you can't even see where I sewed it. So this is a really forgiving material. And then where the sack shape covered the mouth, I made a slit in the mouth and did a bunch of bias cuts in here so that I could fold the pieces inside. I don't know if you can really see, but if I flip this inside out, you can kind of tell where I glued the fur on the inside. And then this is a head harness I made of my son's head. So I taped some foam the circumference of his head, and then I taped another one the height of his head from where that band was, and then I glued some more blocks on top of that, and then I stuck it in here and kind of moved it around to make sure it was in the right place, and then I glued it into that spot. And then I felt like the face fur was really long to work with. I cut out these eye shapes out of fur, and if I put these on the really long fur, it would kind of flow over the eye a lot, so I trimmed it with my husband's beard trimmers, which worked out really well. I had to kind of back and forth a little bit, but I took it down to 1/2 inch at first, and then in some parts I took it down to 1/4 inch, especially around the mouth here, because the really long fur, I got a little extra glue left over, the really long fur kind of blocked the hole, so to make the fur shorter, I trimmed it short. I think I'll have to clean that guy out later. This is the Weber head. The felt eyes have been glued on with hot glue. The mouth has been glued in with hot glue around where the head goes in and trimmed down and stuff. And I drew the teeth on afterward. Initially, I had drawn the teeth and thought I'd place them in because I figured it'd be easier to color them when they're lying flat. Don't do that. Go ahead and put them in the mouth and then color them in, because the fur changes the size of the mouth hole a lot. Now I am working on the legs. So I'm drawing these sort of hourglass tubes that I'm going to cut out and then put over a wire hanger armature and fix to the sides of the heads, because Weber's got 2 legs on each side of the head. I'm getting really close to finished on this guy. I whited in his teeth, outlined it in black, and now I'm working on the armature of the legs that sit around his head. He has 4 little extra legs on this head thing. So what I did was I made the armatures out of bent clothes hangers, and then I'm twisting the ends of them, and then I'm going to bend them so that they're flat against the side here, and then glue them down with a lot of hot glue, and then put a piece of felt over the top to kind of keep the whole thing together. And that'll give it enough surface area that it will all stick according to my experience with gluing stuff with hot glue and wire. All right, and here is the final product, the Weber costume. This was a hit on Halloween. My son got extra candy, he won contests, everybody loved it. Go ahead and do a twirl, kiddo. It was very comfortable. It got pretty warm later on, but it wasn't too heavy or anything like that. And the legs were nice and bendy, so when he walked through crowds, they kind of moved out of the way. So this was a great project. I think if anybody wants to try sort of an advanced Halloween costume, this is a great one to try.